Awesome. So thank you, Jeff, for joining us. I know
Yeah.
you've got a busy schedule, but
No,
thank you for being here.
this is a great event. I want to thank Ben for pulling it together. It's a great event for New England, but also a lot of people travel here, so it's great to be here. And hopefully everybody's having fun finding some good products out there with the product drops. Yeah, the tour is entering its 10th season. I'll just say a few thoughts about where we've come, where we're going. We really see this year as a big pivot year. We're looking to move forward with some strategic growth initiatives starting in 2026 and really kind of push outside of the endemic sport. I think that a lot of what we saw in terms of pandemic growth for the tour in 20 through 2022, really tapered off industry-wide in the last few years. So there's a lot of good signs for the industry, and we feel that the tour can bridge the gap and bring in new eyes. So over the next 5 years, we're looking to double, triple, maybe even quadruple the audience, but it's going to take some strategic growth initiatives. It's going to take some capital, and we're really thinking kind of bigger picture. And this year, after the first 5 years where we've operated after taking over from Mr. Dodge right down the road, we've just kind of seen that where we're at needs new strategy, as an industry and as a tour. So we're looking forward to this year. We're also really proud of last year. Last year we had a highest added cash that we've ever had per event added in North America. And looking back at it, I think it was $67,000 per event. So even though the industry is kind of going through a little bit of churn right now on the pro side of things, and with a lot of our events, they're finding a lot of success to kind of keep growing purses. Now, where we want to grow purses in the future, hopefully this is just a fraction of like where we go. But our mission really is to serve the pros and kind of build the biggest stage that we can transmit for fans on site and online, and kind of looking forward to hopefully entering a new era of that. It's kind of top of mind just kind of as we've gone through this off-season planning. So yeah, really looking forward to the World Championships this year. First one in Europe, and we're going to be over there covering 2 European majors. We'll be covering the EDGF as well, which was a really great breakthrough European event last year. So this season is poised to be kind of a big high watermark for Europe, and the industry over there has been growing rapidly. So those are my cliff notes, kind of top of mind. Happy to expand on any of those or any questions that anybody here may have about the tour, about the network, about media, about the development of the business side of things, anything like that. So thanks for coming.
Yep, thank you. And I do have basic questions that I can kind of facilitate so we can get information out, but this really is intended to be a Q&A, not just an interview. So just to open it up right away, does anybody have a question you would like to ask Jeff, get some of his insights on what's happening? Just raise your hand if you do.
So the rumors of Bushnell pulling out a little bit more, is there going to be a concern with added cash going into this season?
So if I can just restate the question. So you mentioned Bushnell specifically, and then asked a question of, are we concerned about added cash on the tour this season?
Well, Bushnell has kind of been a developing partner. I think they got going in 2021. They're just kind of one of maybe 100 different partners that support our partnership revenue. And if you guys don't know how this generally works, there's a lot of eyes on the sport, and that's kind of where when I started, I was thinking about growing audience, and growing the audience will help all the different sectors of the industry. When the pandemic hit, Bushnell, as a company, which is in golf and shooting sports, decided to debut a product, mostly because one of their lead engineers, Michael Sizemore, was a big disc golfer, and he really got into it in the pandemic. So they've been a great support for a couple of our events. They got involved in Champions Cup, and they, I think, were the title sponsor there for the past 3 years. And they've been one of our, I think, mid to high level partners. And again, I think throughout the course of the year, our VP of partnerships, Sean Jack, manages partnerships, and he's got about 100 different companies that he works with. And so, on a year-to-year basis, like let's say 2 years ago, on a year-to-year basis, we see churn of partners, right? So some out, some in. 2 years ago, Halal Guys, you guys remember Halal Guys? Yeah. They came in and they dipped their toe into it, and we had a great partnership. It was really driven by an internal champion that one of their administrators actually loved disc golf, just kind of like Michael Sizemore at Bushnell. So when that happened, and also I'll cite like Guaranteed Rate was the title sponsor of the Tour Championship, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And then we had Grip 6 before that. So Bushnell is in that category where it's a non-endemic partner who sees the audience and kind of the demographics and says, let's get involved in the sport. Now, some stay for a year and then move on. Like talking to Grip 6 guys, they have a strategy of trying to find sports niches, audiences, demographics that have a low CPM. Now, a CPM is basically how much you got to pay for ads and how many eyes you get, right? And then those businesses non-endemic that don't have a stake in disc golf, they either find success, like so far so good, on a partner like LL Bean, right? And they've stuck with us and they've found that the disc golf audience is buying those products. Bringing that back to, and some of them kind of cycle out. So bringing it back to Bushnell, I think it was great impact for the sport for a good run. I'm not sure exactly what their future plans is. I know that they're cutting back spending a lot this year. Partially, Michael Sizemore is now running Tech Disc. I don't know if you guys know Tech Disc, but he left Bushnell, and so that internal champion has moved on. So the guys at Bushnell still, I think, love disc golf, but in the economy that we've seen, I think over the past 2 years, there's been in outdoor sports a lot of kind of caution, a lot of drawback post-pandemic. Mountain bike industries like this. I came from the mountain resort industry, so ski and snowboard is like this. And for us, it is not actually a concern. We have other non-endemic partners coming in, and most of the added cash per event is a combination of ticketing on site, partners that the LOC, the local organizing committee, gets, and then the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So it's this kind of multifaceted, fundraising effort. And on the very direct side of your question, talking to LOCs and talking to partners, signs are generally that we're looking kind of a little bit more optimistic than maybe we thought three months ago, because at the end of last year, I think that there was some uncertainty about how this year would start, but there are some select retailers, there's some partners that are seeing pretty solid starts. So I think we're cautiously optimistic about growing from last year across a couple sectors in terms of event purses. I generally would think that they're going to be flat. I think last year, 23 to 24, they grew a little bit. But I think in 25, we're projecting them to be, depending, overall maybe flat, but depending on an event basis, maybe some events do more. Ledgestone and Heinold are pretty famous for trying to get really big purses. You never know what they're going to do. I know that our added cash minimums, really drive that, and they're pretty much flat. We've adjusted a couple, but like for DGPT events, it's $35K minimum. DGPT Plus, it's $55K minimum. Playoffs are $75K, and I expect all the events to hit those added cash minimums. So that was long. I'm a long-winded type of person, so sorry for it. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
What about other questions? Raise your hands if you have something you're curious about. And Jeff, I would presume you're fine with everything from the business to the event, or maybe you're somebody just plain old curious about what it's like to be the CEO.
Yeah, anything.
Yes.
I have a question. So over the past 2 years, I think we've seen, I don't know the official numbers, but ticket sales and spectatorship has been down. Mm-hmm. I know you guys announced that you dropped just the general admission pricing. Mm-hmm. What other things are you going to do to help bring more bodies to the actual venue and grow the actual in-person?
Yeah, I'll restate it. So question about trends in spectator volume and revenue. have they gone down? Where are they at? And then do we have any initiatives to support those efforts? Yeah, so I think if you look on an event-to-event basis last year, you saw events go anywhere from or 10% below what they did the year before, or 5 or 10% above. There wasn't a giant fluctuation. I would say overall slightly down a couple percentage points, but we're also talking like per event. Like last year we stopped the Silver Series, so we had a lot more events that we were doing the year before. In terms of what we saw last year, we're trying to look at the venues and markets that can support the big show kind of thing, where ticket sales basically just go to added cash, and so events have they have a hard time if they don't have a lot of spectators and a lot of spectator revenue that we're working with to fund the event and then also put a big added cash number up. So what we're looking at is what markets have been like retread a lot, what markets are maybe small and not growing, and then you look at why, is it has something to do with the LOC's focus or organization or execution. What can we do as a DGPT, to help and promote more? Because generally the LOCs, we want to be promoters. They know their region, they know their area. We come in and we do, kind of regional campaigns with them, digital marketing, to try to drive tickets. So I think basically, when you look at that, you might see some events cycling off that we're having a hard time finding growth in their area or executing, and some new markets cycling in. So overall, we think that's part of the puzzle. The other part is, twofold. It's just generally marketing and communications, but also community engagement. So our marketing and comms team does have some strategic planning where they're already, working to develop a little bit more robust marketing plans with the LOCs, with the event teams that are local. Additionally, the community engagement plan that we're working to roll out does target, basically about 5 to 10 community organizations or businesses that are going to, engage with the events, but it's really a ticket giveaway program. So we want to find folks that aren't likely to buy tickets, that have connections in the metro area, and that are excited about being a part of the event. So delivering, I think our working number is trying to put about 500 tickets in people's hands in the area just for free that wouldn't necessarily buy another ticket, but then using some connections, email marketing, that type of strategy to kind of spread the word about the event a little bit more. Now, of course, if we have a bigger marketing budget, we could buy big ads or billboards or hit the radio waves, and in some cases some marketing dollars are put to that, but I think the community engagement is usually the way to go for disc golf, and just ethic, as an ethic, like I think grassroots in the area, usually we go to places that have strong disc golf presences and clubs, and so there's more engagement with those folks, and then kind of branching out to community. Yeah.
Thanks. Yes, in the middle.
From the Pro Tour's perspective, maybe more of a softball question here. What are sort of the biggest 3 challenges that you see that you're facing right now, maybe quarter one or the first half of the year, that you guys are really focusing on? Like, where's your attention being, focused on right now?
Yeah. Well, I think always at the start of a season, in this time, the main focus is on launch, making sure that the team is, hitting their marks as we roll out on the road, because we have, people that leave basically for 9 months, and they've got to pack the trailers, they've got to get all the assets made. We've got to close, hey, here's the initial wave of partnerships that will be full season partners. So all that's kind of churning behind the scenes. So that's, a big date is like just being ready for, All-Star Challenge and Supreme Flight Open right off the bat here at the end of February. And yeah, we've got a pretty experienced team, and I feel like we're on track there. as far as two others that come to mind for the start of the year here, one would be I think just overall alignment with projections. So financially, we are looking to not have as much variance as we've had for the last couple of years, because as a startup, we started in 2020, and then there's a lot of growth, right? And we even saw that growth well into 2023. And 2023, we actually executed the agreement to take on Jomez. We launched 7 events in Europe. We had some higher than expected legal bills. And so 2023, we saw a lot of revenue growth, and we saw more expense than was forecast. Last year, we really had a great year expense-wise, really projected well, and really held on to our forecast. But as we saw across maybe economically, industry-wide, certainly at some effects on the tour, revenues were a little bit below the growth projection that we had been seeing. So that is top of mind for us, is just making sure that, hey, on both fronts, we want to, project accurately. And I think that that's happening certainly across the industry. And then the third thing that's really top of mind is strategic planning. And so, we're moving forward into the next, era. As I kind of started here mentally, like we had DGPT 1.0, DGPT 2.0 is what we refer to when our management and ownership group started in 2019 and really 2020, right when we launched right into the pandemic. But we've found that this is kind of feeling like a moment to re-strategize. Like the growth initiatives we've had in the last 2 years kind of had to be askewed because of what I spoke to. Hey, there's new things that are unexpected that pop up, and so we're working on resetting that. And we're working with our board, our ownership group, our executive team to do that. We're bringing on more support. In fact, Dominic the FIBO is here, and he's going to be joining our executive team. And that announcement's coming out next week. And in terms of strategic, kind of planning, he'll help lead that. And in general, we feel that the most important thing that those 3 things will do is secure, basically a predictable year that we're, executing at a high level. We think it'll be a lot like last year, and we're ready for that. If it's a little down, we're ready for that. If it's a little up, hopefully we can spur that on. But then, the first part of this year, we actually are looking at it being very important to project the next 5. And we've got a whole laundry list of growth initiatives. How do we strategically structure that to double the audience size of disc golf, right? And how long will it take to do that? That's kind of top of mind, because if we're able to do that, and we feel that, whether, I don't think it's bad that we feel this way, but whether it's right or not, we feel that we have to, our organization has a responsibility for the industry for growth. And, we think that as the Disc Golf Pro Tour, we're positioned in a way, media-wise, player-wise, to wield that growth and break out of the orbit of the disc golf world. No pun intended. But, that just brings them, that happened with the pandemic, and you saw all these companies start up, you saw media companies start up, you saw people getting engaged. It's a great time. Growth is fun, and really, we want to share the ethic and what's important and meaningful to the community about disc golf, which is connection to nature, getting outside. There's so many good things about it. So part of our mission is it's putting the pros, building the biggest stage for them, and then transmitting that story to on-site and online in a way that people love. But beyond that is getting people playing disc golf. That's when you think about more of maybe a PDGA mission, but it's at the core of what we do too, and so, that audience growth, we think leads to more disc golfers, and so we're really thinking hard about, hey, we saw this rocket ship on the pandemic. How do we build one that's not deadly for world citizens, but like, good for growth of disc golf? And there's a lot of ideas out there. I think it's going to be an exciting few quarters getting a plan together, and then pulling together, potentially, capital to go and execute. But I think that it's certainly top of mind. So, yeah.
Thank you. Our QPM, which is questions per minute, is about 0.14 right now. So we have time for a few more here. I see a couple hands. So right here first.
I gotta ask though, what goes into like picking a worlds? Like, does multiple courses make bids?
Picking a worlds. Okay, yeah. I'm happy to share that. So the PDGA oversees the 4 or 5 championships, because U.S. Women's is split from U.S. DGC. U.S. DGC has a long-term contract, so what goes into that is that whether they renew that contract or not, but it's been at the same location for 26 years, I think 20, yeah. The European Open also had a long-term contract, so that is, I think, expiring at the end of 2026. They're actually serving as Worlds this year, right? They did an internal, my understanding, because the PDGA is deciding this, but for the European Disc Golf Championship that's taking European Open's place this year, my understanding is that they had an internal bidding process, and they had put a bid in, and the PDGA accepted it to replace the European Open as the European Open as Worlds. Now, U.S. Women's and Pro Worlds are a more traditional bid process. So, and I'm just kind of running through the majors. So getting to Worlds specifically, I am now on a PDGA committee, a staff committee group that assesses bids for the events that Disc Golf Network covers. So I'll just kind of focus in on Worlds. You need to have 2 courses. You need to have a bid submitted, and there is a bid process. It's probably going to be at least 20 pages. You have to have a history. Like, to get an A tier, you have to have, I think, 3 years of B tiers. You don't necessarily, that doesn't actually apply to Pro Worlds, but if you don't have that, they won't necessarily take a real look at it. So you have to have a history of tournaments there. I think on the added cash side, and again, now I'm just giving my opinion versus like a bid standard. I think on the added cash side, you had to have been able to deliver something around, at least 30 to 50K. That like, hey, I've got the ability to bring in partners that want to support the event. So a list of long-term partners. You have to, basically have the recipe for spectators, enough infrastructure on site, enough parking. You also have to have an infrastructure for media operations and live signal. And then there's a lot of parts and pieces of that bid process that you just fill in details about, what your planning is. And now it's like a long-term process where there's, your 2027 Worlds is being awarded in this cycle, right, in 2025. So, that will be, almost 2 years, 18 months of planning ahead of it. So, you got to basically say, here's my event. It's experienced. I got 2 courses. It runs like a business that can deliver the assurity that the PDGA needs. So, yeah.
So if you want to run one in 2030, you better start right now.
2028. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to work ahead. All right, in the back.
You spoke a little bit about the expansion into Europe and the 7 events that you opened, as well as the Worlds coming up this year. Is there a push through the Pro Tour or even through the PDGA as a whole into other countries that have some community towards disc golf, like Japan?
The PDGA has an international director. His name's Brian Henniger. He used to be the director of the PDGA. And so in terms of like grassroots, I know he is actively and regularly working to bring more countries into the PDGA, whether they have, some members or a coordinator, a country coordinator. Like in the US, they have state coordinators and there's country coordinators. They do have PDGA Europe. I know that there's some talk about like PDGA South America. There's, New Zealand and Australia are growing. In terms of Japan specifically, it's had a big event that was really the Japan Open, which has been a major, and it's been also an A tier, I think. And most recently, maybe 23, it ran. That is my understanding. I haven't been there, but like, is that it was someone who has a lot of resources in Japan and connected to a golf course and like maybe even a government, ministry of Japan that was able to say, hey, we're going to do something special here. I'm not personally sure what the growth of disc golf looks like in Japan, and I don't know of like a specific initiative about Japan. I do know that generally the growth of disc golf in Asia is looking robust, and I think that from everything I've heard, China is like kind of hard to assess. Like it's a little bit of like a black box. But I know that Thailand is growing, and yeah, there's growth everywhere. And in terms of I told you about Brian Henniger, the international side of the PDGA. And Henniger is great at that. I mean, honestly, he really is good at organizing and finding people. His philosophy, and this is the philosophy with Europe, is help build leadership there that can just run it themselves, right? So it's not like, hey, you got to go through US or anything. It's like, yeah. And so like our DGBT Europe team, we've got people in Europe that are making a lot of decisions over there. And the concept is they probably know better than we do what the strategy should be for Europe. And, I think they've done a great job so far. In terms of what we've seen, we're looking to lay out an international plan that can go similarly to how Europe's gone, which is grow, prove a market, show that spectators are going to come out, that the courses are high level, that the tournaments are high level, that you can support the top pros coming because there's enough out of cash to play for, and meet those standards that I talked about. And then, they will have a point series for people any players that don't travel outside of Europe. And so that will operate. Ideally, let's say we have New Zealand, Australia come on board for that. They could basically operate that, and then maybe we just do 1 or 2 point events there. That's an emerging market that we've had talks with some New Zealand events, but now that we have this format that we've used in Europe, I see that happening elsewhere. It's going to be one step at a time, maybe an exhibition, a Q series. But because as soon as we say this is a points event, you're requiring players, at least in some players' minds, not everybody's going to Europe, but you're requiring players to go or miss an opportunity. And so it's an expensive trip to New Zealand and Australia, but I think like having exhibitions or doing one a year there. We've also talked to some folks in Colombia and in South America. Hopefully we can be part of like seeding growth in areas by bringing, some of the best pros in the sport, and the best pros in the sport can go anywhere, as well for exhibitions, A tiers, that kind of stuff. But hopefully, bringing a full field or going live in other countries, helps as well and can really build those big events. So that's kind of our thought internationally.
We probably have time for just a couple more, so show your hand so I can get to them. We'll go back up first.
Yeah. With the increase of players like not being sponsored this year, we've seen a huge fall off in the number of players that are renewing contracts or anything. Has there been any interest in raising the bottom line of cash winnings to assist players who are, potentially unsponsored? It does seem like a pretty regular thing that players are like living out of vans or cars to travel. So just to kind of like assist that in the wake of the loss of a sponsorship or anything, or is that mostly judged by how much the top pool?
By the bottom, do you mean, so for for payouts, we pay out the 40% of the field for men and 50% of the field for women. You mean going further down?
I guess mostly the ratio between how much the first place person's winning versus how much the last cash maker.
Yeah, and just to repeat it, he's just wondering about the payout scale. So like how steep the curve is. Yeah. So generally, we've probably moved to a pretty flat back 3 quarters and a steep top quarter. That's kind of how we see our curve right now. We will likely, in the discussions I've had, and this is for tour operations, really to make a final decision on. I think that the curve works pretty well. I think lowering like last cash up a little bit has been discussed, and I don't know that we're thinking too much about changing the top quarter of the curve. But if you do raise the last cash, it will naturally do that a little bit. The Players Council, talks about this stuff, and we almost put this stuff in their hands now. So if the players get together and say, hey, we think the curve should be adjusted, then we'll adjust it. Like for instance, the one curve that's changing is the point curve. Some of the events will be worth more. Like basically, DGBT event was worth 100 last year. It's going to be worth 150 now. They've also asked StatMando to recalculate the curve, and so now it's going to, instead of zeroing out at 50, it's going to go to like 120 or the size of the MPO field, and we're going to have a custom curve for the FPO field. And so that was totally driven by the Players Council. If they come and really the Players Council represents the players, it's elected by the players. They probably have the power to come and say, hey, we think that this curve should be a little different. But as of now, I don't think anything too radically is going to change. To speak to your broader point, it wasn't that long ago when we didn't have as big a touring field. So it's been amazing, especially since 2019, 2020, to see that growth in touring players that are all in. I think that sponsorships have dialed back. What we see is that we want to hit that at a cash mark, and then we're also working with players in some cases on financing, and making sure that the financial burden is not coming from us, that they have a little bit of room. And then, in terms, one thing I would say is that some players may also be doing regionals, you know what I mean? Maybe not full-time on the road, but they're still going to be able to qualify through all events. And I've talked to a lot of players like that. And so we have a partial tour card that has, I think, about 40 players. We've got about 140 in the full card and about 30 in Europe. So we basically are, I think we have about 40 more tour card holders this year than last year. So it's grown quite a bit. But I do think people will re-strategize, whether it's like full-time on the road for the kind of the end of the lower half of the standings. I'm not sure, but I think overall it's looking healthy. But people are having to reset and kind of rethink what they're doing. Yeah.
Sort of to tie into a question from way earlier, and then your one about the international stuff. Inside the U.S., do you guys have regional kind of heads of each region to help with the marketing and getting people interested, or is that more so on the local course and local event organizer? Is there somebody in the middle there that kind of help organize it?
Yeah, so our marketing and communications department does work directly with LOCs on a specific regional marketing plan, and they have increased that to make it a little bit more deep this year, and get that marketing plan out a little sooner. We don't have regional assignments, but we do have a regional rep contractor program, not really focused on marketing, but just more of hey, if you're, basically we have an operations crew that's on the road. Generally we have maybe 6 operations staff at an event, and sometimes you might want to super volunteer. We've actually started contracting those folks and making it worth their time. And that's part of supporting the event, but that's not really marketing. So marketing and comms is just more, working regionally. We worked with a PR firm that, works to get out local news channels, CBS, ABC affiliates, NBC affiliates, that kind of stuff. But, I think the more promotion, the better. And, if we have more resources, we would definitely think about, maybe a targeted region, because there are nuances in each region and even in each city. The one thing I can say is that we're doing more work than ever with DMOs and CVBs and basically municipalities. So DMOs, destination marketing organizations. So visit Kissimmee or, visit Salt Lake or, the Austin Sports Commission. And the Sports Commission in Austin's been a great asset, and they know their city, and they basically help with in-kind promotion and connecting us to organizations like I talked about to give away some tickets and charities, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of probably the next step for us in terms of like targeted, kind of metro regional marketing is using those, convention visitors bureaus, the state or the city or the county, and then the destination marketing organization. Yeah. Cool. Yep.
Where are we at in the process of taking that standardized store basket?
Yeah, so we're gonna, I don't know if we've announced this, but we're planning a follow-up this year, to do part two of part one. So part one, we were, really trying to understand our process, and so we have to make some tweaks to our process, working with the PDGA and Jeff Homburg, who's done the PDGA basket certifications, right? And so I think it's 99 or 100 baskets that are approved for PDGA championship play. We have, I think, 11 baskets on our list right now. So part two will basically take some baskets off that list. It may add 1 or 2 baskets, but it will basically bring that number smaller. And from there, we're gonna plan the step of, do we need to go to 1 basket only? Or will we basically license this smaller number of baskets? Let's just say there's 3 that, and again, it's going to be based on some player feedback, and that's why the players are a big part of this. But if we have an opportunity to go to 1 and it makes sense, that's certainly a possibility. But I think right now we're trying to get the second part complete, analyze, approve, and then say, okay, are the next steps taking it down to 1, taking it down to 2, taking it down to 3, or where are we going from there? So trying to really, it's probably going to be 2 more years. I would say, like, let's just say we do get to 1. I would say, minimum 2 years. But you might see less, before then. Yeah.
We're just about getting ready to wrap. If I don't see any hands, just I have one other question to
Yeah.
add from my own perspective. So everyone, and this is probably a good thing, has an opinion. So you see disc golf media for their own opinions. You see professionals come on disc golf media and share their opinions about any of these topics. Obviously, sometimes that's done publicly, sometimes privately. You can scroll Reddit, social media, you name it. What does the Pro Tour do with that stuff? All those opinions, like, are you hearing it? Are you consuming it? Just curious your reaction. Everything from, like, you could bristle the hair on your neck, or are you like writing it all down in the comment box and dealing with it? So just curious how the Pro Tour handles that.
This feels like more of a philosophical question, but,
Maybe, but I'm just curious.
well, I would just say that,
Pro Tour handles it. What do you?
first of all, like, I'll just give you an example that maybe I can use as a metaphor. We surveyed all of the Disc Golf Network subscribers, and we will continue to do that yearly. We also engage in the FAR research study and ask a lot of questions, and we partner with them and promote it. So those are pretty big sample sizes. So, when it comes to, let's just say, there's an issue with Disc Golf Network, and we get 100 support tickets, and there's 500 comments saying, I'm very frustrated about this thing that happens, and you solve it and you move on, and then hey, it's technology, and OTT is like a growing tech, and so a lot of the back end tech stuff, sometimes you need to keep addressing. But what I would say is that you might have 500 people, right? And that sounds really, really noisy, whether it's in Reddit or social media or anywhere in our email inbox or something like that. But you go on, so you address the issue. When you survey about that issue, let's just say you've over 50,000 subscribers, you may get a result that says 90% of the folks are extremely happy, right? Or which is usually a good score on satisfaction quizzes, right? But that didn't change the fact that these 1,000 people had a bad experience. 500 people were really angry, and you had like 100, really rugged social media comments. That doesn't also change the fact that 90% of the people were very satisfied, And so when it comes to reacting to, social, Reddit, anything like that, I think that it's ill-advised to, kind of be hair trigger about any of it. I think we want to always, one of our core values is continual improvement. And so if we're aware of an issue, we're going to work to address it and then improve it and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. When it comes to, any specific comment or, criticism, I think that we have an understanding that our company and our business, even though disc golf is not the biggest industry in the world, it's a sizable industry, that our company's got enough, either viewers, subscribers, fans, that we're going to hear criticism. And when we do, we have to analyze it. We can't, say, oh, forget about it. I think you have to understand what's in good faith, address that in good faith, but then also contextualize it and say, like, where is this? Because if we were running around after every comment, we wouldn't have time to execute or operate, right? What we need to do is kind of prioritize, because there's never going to be a list of things that we need to improve that is addressable, like in a year. We have a list that spans multiple years. And you prioritize what is important now, what can we get to now. Kind of circling back to the growth topic, if we're able to double the audience, if you're able to do that, then you're able to have more resources to address more problems or do more things, or bring more folks into the sport and mess up in a new way that you're going to try out next year. But continual improvement, knowing that we make mistakes, and knowing how to quantify and address those mistakes, is how I approach it. And sometimes, knowing that, you got 10% versus 90% is part of that. So.
Thank you. All right, I think that's what we have time for, which is great. Thank you all for sitting here and listening. Jeff, thank you certainly for lending your time and sharing.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like we're all going to be following along. So.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the great questions, everybody.